We heard stories of bank directors being taken away, in some cases at gunpoint, by intelligence officials and being forced to resign their positions after signing over their shares to people close to the old regime.
It's an amazing thing, what they did. They simply removed the board on gunpoint and produced their own board, take over. Then issue loans to their cronies.
So easy.
Loans, quote unquote. Everybody knew that you don't have to pay it back.
One of the best ways to quantify the impact of this banking takeover is looking at non-performing loans and the rates of those, particularly after banks were taken over. And with state-owned banks, the rate of non-performing loans was already very high. Now, with a bank like Islami Bank, it really escalated after the takeover.
In theory, no family could have more than 10% of a bank, but in reality, a number of these groups controlled not just one bank, but multiple banks, and used their control of the banks to effectively award themselves loans. These fraudulent loans were being approved often to fictitious companies or even individuals who had no collateral or means to pay back these loans.
S.alam Group is owned by Mohammed Saiful Alam, who is a tycoon, you could say, in Bangladesh. The interim government estimates that Saiful Alam or S.alam and the group took out around 10 billion or maybe more from Bangladesh.
s.alam has said this is categorically untrue.
In terms of how the money went overseas, broadly speaking, there is both over-invoicing, putting a much larger amount for those imports than the actual amounts going overseas, and under-invoicing, so they're bringing back less money from overseas earnings than expected. Another major area was informal channels.
There's this thing called hundi, which is very similar to what's known in other parts of the world as hawala, which is an informal way of transferring money. If I want to transfer money from London to Bangladesh, I give money to an agent here, and then that money is cashed out at the other end in Bangladesh by an agent there, minus the commission, and they settle that bill separately, but no money actually moves. Now, this can be legitimate or it can be illegitimate as a way to move laundered money.
Bangladesh, like actually a number of other developing countries, have capital controls. Individuals are not allowed to take out more than $12,000 without permission from the central bank.
Once the loan has been issued and everyone's taken their cut and it's never being paid back to the bank, that's where the hundi network comes in. Hundi is often used to move remittance money from the UK to Bangladesh, but it can also be used to move money from Bangladesh to the UK, and it can happen at a really big scale.
And one estimate, they looted $234 billion in both from the banking sector and business sector in different ways. This is probably the biggest money plundering from any country in the world.
One of the things Bangladesh's Anti-Corruption Commission is looking into are allegations that people tied to the old regime skimmed funds from big infrastructure projects. One is the Padma Bridge project, which the World Bank declined to lend to because of corruption concerns. And another one was Bangladesh's first ever nuclear power plant.
None of this, by the way, was secret. It was in the press, in the media, people were openly talking about it. Corruption was very public and in your face, but no one cared because no one had the power to do anything about it. And most people were so atomized and fearful that if they spoke out, they would disappear. There were these massive processes of disappearing people, putting them into dungeons, mysterious killings, mysterious disappearances, that even though everyone knew what was going on, they kept quiet.
When Sheikh Hasina was forced to flee Bangladesh and go to India, there was a power vacuum, and Mohammed Yunus was asked to step in. He's a Nobel Prize-winning economist and the father of microlending, and also really disliked by Sheikh Hasina.
I'm Mohammed Yunus. I'm the chief advisor of the government of Bangladesh. We know that our time is limited because this is an interim government, but we must start the process.
One of Yunus's first acts was to name Ahsan Mansour, a former IMF official, as his central bank governor and head of a task force on asset recovery.
I'm Ahsan Mansour. I'm currently the governor
of Central Bank of Bangladesh. When I took over, we found that at least 11 of these banks, they didn't have the liquidity to pay the depositors who was asking for their money. I had to immediately step in, took over the banks, or confiscated the shares that were held by previous owners. In order to keep the financial system functional, we had to inject 290 billion taka. Now we have to go for some selected resolution of those banks and find new investors and take it forward so that those banks may be consolidated, may be merged, and then start functioning like a normal, healthy bank.
The central bank governor estimates that s.alam siphoned off $10 billion with the help of the DGFI, one of Bangladesh's security services.
s.alam has also claimed that it's been wronged by the restrictions put on its banks in Bangladesh by the interim government because it's been prevented from lending and the management teams of those banks have been changed. So s.alam Group claims to be the victim in all this. When Yunus first came to head the interim government, he had a lot of legitimacy. He's seen as very credible in Bangladesh and also internationally. Since then, things have become a bit more difficult.
So Yunus is under growing pressure to hold elections soon, but he says he needs to reform Bangladesh's corrupted institutions first. The date that he's currently giving is February 2026.
We have to do as much reform as possible. We don't want to create another fascist regime, weaponizing everything, the government functionaries and the judiciary and so on.
So the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the biggest opposition group during Sheikh Hasina's time, is almost certain to win.
While you've changed the top layer of government, you have a huge bureaucracy underneath him, which hasn't necessarily changed so very much.
Whatever.
When you steal billions of dollars or hundreds of millions, you actually can afford to hire the very best financial structurers and financial advisors and legal experts in the world to help you move and hide your money. My name is Islam. I'm an advisor, a consultant to the governor of Bangladesh Bank and to the Asset Recovery Task Force.
So Bangladesh is struggling with a lack of experts with enough skills to lay the groundwork for prosecutions that might bring some of this money back.
One of the challenges for the Asset Recovery Task Force is that this has been something that people that stole those assets have been planning for a long time. You can't recover money unless you know where it's gone to.
One of the problems of asset recovery is that often it involves settlements, essentially cut a deal with the tycoon or whoever stole the cash and got it out of the country. It becomes a balance between getting the money back and what's acceptable to the Bangladeshi public.
Criminal prosecutions, the evidence bar is quite high, so I think getting that balance right is one of the challenges.
People say you cannot get all of them. I said, whatever amount we can get, we have to find the concrete evidences, follow the track, get to the support of the relevant governments.
If the Yunus administration can get governments elsewhere to take action like has happened in the UK with the National Crime Agency, then those wheels will be set in motion and they'll be hard to stop. I think in terms of Bangladesh, a big question mark remains over how much power and influence these conglomerates that allegedly took this cash out in the first place under Sheikh Hasina, they will have over any future government. And that will dictate whether corruption continues to be pervasive in the country.
While Bangladesh's revolution seems like a turning point, it's also possible that the country could revert to a situation where one group has too much political power, except in this case it would be the BNP, not the Awami League.
The aspirations of the people who came out on the streets were very high. It will take time to get anywhere close to that, but reform of the basic institutions that are now center stage, and I think it will be very hard to push that back, whoever comes to power.
Our fear is that maybe we will not be able to fulfill our promises that we have promised to our martyrs. That is the biggest fear right now.
This historic embezzlement of money, wow, the amount, the impact of that stealing is an enormous pressure on the people of Bangladesh. It's needed to recover at least some money, at least some sufferings of our people should be reduced. Let's see what the government can do. Let's see how far we can reach to return our own money from many countries and from many unknown destinations.